Okay, but what's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order? Welcome back to the episode of Okay But, a series where I review any and all games out there today. Today we're going to take a look at the newly released Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order that's simul-released on all platforms November 15th. This game has been long awaited by fans in the Star Wars universe and in the gaming universe alike. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order has been under a lot of criticism leading up to its release, since a lot of Star Wars fans were wary of buying another Star Wars product from EA as a publisher after the Battlefront II issues and the concern of microtransactions. Now, earlier in the year, they did announce they were not going to have any microtransactions in Jedi Fallen Order, and it's being mostly about the story. And they actually pulled that off. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order will run you about $60 on all platforms without any sales for the holidays, and will get you a good 18 to 20 hours of gameplay. I myself spent about 14 hours with the main story, but didn't explore a lot of the side areas too much. Now, if you do explore all the side areas, there's a lot to explore in the game, but I think overall you'll probably get, on average, 18 to 20 or 22 hours of gameplay out of this game. But I will say that the time that you do get out of it is very rewarding. This game, summed up in a single word, is spectacle. There are a lot of gripes that I have around the gameplay itself and how they set up the progression for the character and the things that you unlock along the way, but I was just thoroughly blown away by the visuals, the vistas you come upon, and the general spectacle of the game itself. It actually feels like you're inside your own Star Wars movie, and to add to this, they included a lot of the characters and visuals they've used in the movies the last few years, like Rogue One, to be able to immerse yourself in that environment. There's also a character reveal at the end of the game that is very shocking and awesome and feels great when you get there, and overall the story feels like it's very cohesive with the Star Wars universe they've been building up for the IP over the last few years. Gameplay-wise, you're looking at an action-adventure game, so three-dimensional combat. You will have some elements of the Soulsborne style of gameplay, but it's not as hardcore as that. Generally, you'll be using a lightsaber for most of your engagements, and you'll be moving in three-dimensional using dodging, blocking, and parrying to defeat your enemies. There's lots of mini-bosses in the game, and then bosses of varying sizes. You'll get large bosses that are really cool to fight against, and then a lot of humanoid / Sith-style lightsaber combat fights. The progression itself left me a little bit unsatisfied, as it's generally just a grid of talents to pick up. Not even all of them are all that interesting either. It seems a little uninspired how they did the progression in the game. You'll get general things like a jump dash or an ability to block more, get more HP, get more force power, which you use as a resource to use any of your force moves, including pull, push, that sort of thing. But it does allow you to feel like you're getting stronger throughout the game. Now, they made a decision to not include general movement stamina in this game, and I think this was a great decision, because if their focus is really around the ambiance and the story of the game, then not worrying about having to stop and slow down because you're moving too much or dodging too much allows you to feel more like the main character in an action movie like a Star Wars. Now, you still have guard stamina, and so you can't block forever, which makes sense. You can't have that in there, but you can dodge around and run around as much as you want. There's also a lot of really cool gameplay combat mechanics that allow you to interact with using the Force. You can pull the tongue out of frogs, you can pick up droids and throw them at other people. There's a lot of really visceral movements, and I think generally the experience of going through the combat was satisfying. It just wasn't really overly complex or overly interesting. Now, I wouldn't say that the simple combat and progression actually was a huge negative for the game, as again, the main focus for this game is really just the experience and the spectacle of going through it. There are so many times where I was walking along and happened upon a huge path where the camera pans out and shows this amazing vista where you get to see a giant mountain or a huge ship crashing in the distance. Not only that, but they've included a lot of really cool movement in the game. Where you're sliding down slopes, gliding across ice, jumping and grabbing ropes. It feels very momentous and very exciting and thrilling to go through. They also made it seamlessly move from scene to scene. You'll get cutscenes that go into gameplay and back and forth. And you also have flashbacks of your time as a Padawan learning the Force and becoming a Jedi Knight yourself. So there's a lot of really cool interplay between the story, the universe, and the overall environment that makes it feel very enriched. Now, while we're talking about environment, I will have to say I was a little disappointed to see how much they reused the environments that they made. Now, after having spent so many years as a game developer myself, I totally get it. Looking at the size of their environment team, looked like they had about 8 to 10 environment artists. They had a bunch of concept artists, but realistically, for the fidelity that they made all the environments you played in the game, it makes sense that they would want to get a lot of mileage out of those environments once they're already made, but it did feel a little cheap that throughout the game, you only visit 5 planets, and one of them you only visit once. And so what you'll do is you'll end up land on a planet, progress through that environment, have to walk back to the same environment when you're done, and then you have to come back later when a new area gets unlocked, and you have to progress to the same environment again. And so some of the environments get very repetitive because you're traveling to the same areas repeatedly. Though I think the spectacles you get when you do get to the right areas are enough for me to feel okay with this. It just did feel a little cheap that there was less environments and pathways to figure out. You'll get a little bit of a reminder of platforming games where you have to unlock certain things like a double jump or the ability to climb walls, and you come back to previous areas where you couldn't get past an obstacle and now you can. And so you'll get a lot of that in the game. You will unlock a double jump and you'll get different mechanics allow you to travel through the world, and then using your droid BD1 will allow you to unlock different things and different puzzles. None of the puzzles felt too out of place. There were actually some that were very satisfying. The combat generally is very visceral and satisfying, and overall the spectacle was so wondrous that made the game very satisfying to play. So if you're a Star Wars fan or you're a fan of action adventure, this is probably the game for you, and it's worth the pickup. You'll get a good amount of time out of it and will probably thoroughly enjoy the dialogue and the combat experience and the visuals that you get along the way. I have to give credit to the AI designers and the voiceover designers in the game as well, as there's tons of moments where I found myself cracking up over the voice lines that the enemies had and how they interact with what you're doing. If you back up, it will trigger them to call you out for being a coward. If you charge towards them, their AI will adjust, and sometimes you'll find even the weakest enemies outwitting you in their positioning and movement because they're reacting to what you're doing. So overall, the AI felt really good in the game, and then generally how they use the voiceover triggers to make an ambiance of you versus real people actually made some pretty awesome moments and some hilarious moments when they didn't line up just perfectly. Now, the game does have a decent amount of bugs in it. It wasn't perfectly polished upon release. I myself ran into a soft lock situation where I was falling and got stuck and couldn't undo myself. I was just permanently in a falling state. There's some times where animations get stuck and don't play right, or mobs will move around and glitch around. So it's not the most polished product, but again, I don't think any of those are enough to detract from the general amazing experience you get from playing the game. There's a lot of unlocks that you get for visuals. You can customize everything. I did wish that you could unlock the colors for the lightsaber throughout the game. You actually will, for anyone that's wondering, you'll unlock all the lightsaber colors at once at a certain point in the story. Now, it kind of makes sense lore-wise as why you'd unlock it then, but outside of that, it would be nice to get more than just 2 colors in the first half of the game. Overall, I had a great time with this game. I thoroughly enjoyed playing it. I was very impressed with just how gorgeous the game was overall and how it worked the story into the campaign element. You don't always get campaign games like this that really just immerse you in what you're playing, and so you always want to cherish them when they come around. It did have some downsides with a rather weak progression system, combat that was pretty simple, and then environments that get a little too heavily reused, but those get overshadowed by the general joy and wonder you get from progressing through the game yourself. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you're gonna love it even more. So that does it today for OK But Jedi Fallen Order. This game is available on all platforms and is a lot of fun. So if you played it, let me know what your favorite part of the game was down below. And if there's any other games you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comment section down below. Additionally, if you liked this video, do me a favor and hit that like button, because when you do, the YouTube algorithm does wondrous things and allows this video to be seen by more people just by you hitting that simple thumbs up. Additionally, if you like my content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it, and welcome aboard. And if you have any questions for me or just want to come hang out, check me out on my live stream, twitch.tv/drybear. I'm live most days in the afternoons, Eastern time. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I'll see you in the next one.